Welcome, everyone, to the Superstar Denise Show. I'm your host, Denise, and today we have a very special guest with us. We have a doctor in the house.
Thank you.
And this gentleman here has been practicing medicine for over 50 years. He's a specialist in rheumatology and immunology. He has written and edited 16 books, now working on a 17th.
Yes.
So many years of experience training other doctors. And he's also the host of the Health Frontiers with Dr. Bob. So let's welcome everyone, Dr. Robert Lahita, famously known as Dr. Bob. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Denise. Thank you very much.
And I know you're a very, very busy man. So we were super happy that we have this opportunity to talk to you, to get to know you better. Just so everyone else knows, Dr. Bob is a celebrity in the medical world.
Oh, I think that's overstated.
No. I think I'm understating. And we have, if you could see here, tons of accolades and many more. And so we're going to dive a little bit into what Dr. Bob has been doing, what he's currently working on. And my favorite part, we're going to see a little bit more behind the scenes with Dr. Bob and hear a little bit about your childhood and then your journey along the way, meeting some very famous people in history.
Should be very interesting.
It should be very interesting. All right. So let's get into it. Without further ado, Dr. Bob here has mentioned to me earlier that his journey into medicine started at the age of 13.
Yes.
When he built a lab in his parents' basement.
Correct.
Can you elaborate on this?
Well,
a little bit wild.
I had a summer job and I worked for it. I guess I can mention the company I worked for was MLK Sharp and Dome in Rahway at the Institute for Therapeutic Research. And at that time, MLK was very gracious to have me as an animal attendant every summer. So my summer job was to take care of beagles, chickens, hamsters, and thousands upon thousands of mice. And I can't forget the flying squirrels. So I was in charge of all of these animals, cleaning the cages because the guys that took care of them had to go on vacation. So I was the vacation person, and I was just a kid at the time. But that inspired me to really build something in my home. I was always interested in investigative medicine. And as I told Denise at the early part of the show, I said, Pope Leo had an altar and I had a lab. Not that I'm at the same level as Pope Leo, but I had a laboratory in my basement. And I said, my father was gracious enough to allow me to do that. It was a separate room. My mother embraced it, as all mothers probably do, so that sort of thing. But I used to get deliveries of mice, and I sold mice to pet stores to make a modest living as a child. And I also had...
You sold mice to pet stores?
I did. I drove my car around with cages in the back. I had a 47 Chevy, which is an old beat-up car, and I had all the cages, and I would go from pet store to pet store, and I think I got something like 5 cents a mouse. But at that time, that was a lot of money, so I could make like $2 or $3 a stop.
Do you know, and I bet you some of the kids know, at least my generation, the cartoon Dexter's Lab?
No, I don't know that.
So this cartoon is basically Dexter is this young kid who has a full lab, and he's like a mad scientist. And he's like, building like concoctions of some chemicals, and he has animals and this and that. And then he has a very annoying younger sister that comes and harasses him, and that would be totally me.
Yes.
If you haven't seen that cartoon, I recommend.
No,
but we have a real life Dexter.
Well, I hired a plumber to build me a fume hood. I don't know if you know what that is. In most of the young people out there who go to biology or chemistry class would know a fume hood is to blow fumes out when you do reactions in your lab. So I did reactions. In fact, I blew my house up at least twice. And I didn't really blow the house up, but I had bromination. I was a sort of a mini junior chemist. I enjoyed chemistry. And all the kids in the neighborhood would come over and we would do things, experiments. So I blew the house up with bromine, and I remember brominating the entire basement. The good news is it killed any organism or rat or mouse that lived in the basement. But it also, one was not able to go into the basement because of the red cloud that undulated as you opened the door. And this was a one-family home. As you opened the door to go down to the basement, there was this red cloud that lasted about 4 days, and you couldn't go down there because you'd choke. And so then I would turn the fans on and blow the bromine out of the basement. I had a lot of things that I did at that time when I blew fumes out into
I would say your parents are
they were very understanding. My father less so than my mother, but my mother understood that one of the things I blew out was the hydrogen sulfoxide, I believe, the bypass of a reaction. The funny part about this is it was a white smoke that covered the entire lawn and my mother's flower bed. And when it rained, it turned into sulfuric acid and killed all of her plants. So that was not
lovely.
good. I did not know that was going to happen, obviously.
So your interest in science,
Yes.
right, stemmed from working at Merck.
Yes, as a summer student. And then I became a technician after 2 or 3 years as an animal attendant. I'm very grateful to Merck for giving me that opportunity. And it was a great place to work. And I met some very famous scientists then who are legendary now, but back then they were just like regular people.
Wow. That is one way to start.
Yeah, that's how I got my PhD in microbiology, molecular genetics, because I was so interested in microbiology. When I went to medical school, it was a natural for me to go and get an extra doctorate. And it was explained to the head of the department, who was also a very famous guy in Philadelphia, that I wanted a PhD and I had to take off 2 years, not guaranteed, to get a doctorate in addition to my Doctor of Medicine degree. So I'm an MD PhD, and the PhD was concurrent after the 3rd year with the medical school.
So going back to when you were a kid, what did your friends think about your lab?
They thought it was a riot because I had a pet alligator and people would come over.
Of course.
I had a 5-foot alligator in a big tank. And that's a medical school story, I have to tell you, about how I got into medical school. It's apocryphal, but it's really true.
Did you bring your pet alligator to
No,
university?
No. Well, I had this out. So all the kids came over and they had a wonderful time at my house. And again, it was a small house. It was a one-family home, suburban home, typical. And
in New Jersey?
In New Jersey, yeah. In Linden, New Jersey. Linden, New Jersey. And the name of my alligator was quite a popular name among all my friends. The name of the alligator was Hannibal, as the general that crossed the Alps. And that was a perfect name for this 5-foot alligator. So Hannibal escaped on the day I was supposed to go and have my medical school interview. And I ran around with trichloroethylene, which is a form of cleaning fluid, but also is a wonderful anesthetic. And I had a 50 cc syringe full of trichloroethylene and cardboard boxes. And I don't know if you've ever tried to chase an alligator around because he's hissing and snapping. And
I mean, and I'm from Florida, and I have yet to chase an alligator, but that would be on a bucket list.
Yeah, well, my bucket list was very early. So I put Hannibal in this huge box, cornered him against the wall, punctured the box, the cardboard box, with the syringe of trichloroethylene, and Hannibal went to sleep. So my dad came down, my late dad came down and said, we have to put Hannibal in a wooden crate. So he had this wooden crate that we put the lid on. We put Hannibal in with the idea that we were going to take Hannibal to the zoo because we couldn't keep him. He was too big.
I mean,
he escaped from his tank.
Yeah.
And so when I went to medical school for the interview in Philadelphia, a place that I went, Thomas Jefferson or Jefferson University, I was interviewed by a psychiatrist. So he asked me the question. He said, while I have you here, have you done anything interesting in the last week? And I said, funny you should ask. I said, I chased my 5-foot alligator around my house this morning, and we put him to sleep, and he's on his way to the zoo. And there was this pregnant pause that lasted about 2 minutes. He couldn't believe it. He had his mouth open. And I said, no, this is a true story. I said, my alligator named Hannibal got away from me this morning before I left for Philadelphia. I said, and I had to anesthetize him just to calm him down until I was able to get back home.
So then he was like, well, we need to have you here.
Yeah, he said, well, that's pretty interesting among all the
You
other
answered
things.
the question. he asked.
Exactly.
Well,
exactly.
and just so, ladies and gentlemen, you understand, this is why we have to have Dr. Bob on the show, because he's not just a typical doctor. For the most part, we think of doctors as very kind of like stone cold, straight-laced, not exactly the social butterflies, but meeting you through doing the podcast here,
yes.
the podcast, we just saw a lot of character, and we're going to discover more as we go along with this interview.
That's fun.
But
well, it's good to tell people that, these are interesting things that happen. So if you have a child that's into building his own lab, take advantage of it and really entertain that and give him free rein. Although, Denise, I think that if I did today as a child what I did back when I was a child,
no.
It wouldn't work because people would deliver chemicals to my house. Crates of mice and rats would come, and my mother would welcome them at the door. She was very supportive. My father, less so. He thought of me as kind of, what do we have here? But he was supportive in a big way, knowing that was.
And that is one big part of your success in being a doctor for all these years is that you had support from the beginning.
From the very beginning.
Yeah. And that's important to know how your parents really shape you and can encourage you to follow the passions.
Yes.
And then turn it into a big successful career.
Yes. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, so you go on and you have your residency at Cornell, New York Hospital.
Now New York Presbyterian, yes.
Now. And then you worked 12 years in the Rockefeller University?
Yes.
Please elaborate.
With a great professor. Well, I had, as I told you, I had been trained in immunology, but not a lot of immunology. I was a molecular biologist. In medical school, I did molecular microbiology. So that's basically looking at bacteria and viruses. So I was perfect for the pandemic when it occurs. And many of the viewers here might recognize me from talking about the COVID virus. Nevertheless, in my residency, my chairman at the time, who's very well known, said to me, what do you want to do as an elective? I said, I'd like to study some immunology because I don't think I'm really trained in immunology that well. So he said, well, you have two choices. Robert Good, who's very famous, now deceased, was the head of research for Sloan Kettering and Memorial Hospital. And Henry Kunkel, who's also deceased, was the full professor of immunology and immunopathology at the Rockefeller University. I had read the book by Sinclair Lewis called Arrowsmith, which was all about the McGurk Institute, and that was really Rockefeller University. And it was an intriguing book, and if any of you really want to read a book that's really interesting, it takes place in the 1920s, read Arrowsmith. So I was inspired, and I loved Dr. Good, but I thought Rockefeller Institute at the time was not a university yet, was a wonderful place to go, to do research, and to also take care of patients, but on a research basis. So that's how I wound up at Rockefeller. So I was supposed to go there for 2 weeks as an elective, and I wound up being there for 12 years.
Well, I mean, I think that worked out in all of our favor because you learned a lot about immunology.
Yes.
And you would later on be featured on various news channels talking about your research.
Yes.
Obviously, if you see here, we have Immunity Strong. So this is one of Dr. Lahita's many books.
Yes.
And you've really discovered how people can build their health.
Yes.
And you give a lot of tips on how to stay healthy.
Yep.
In this, we were talking earlier, there's seems to be some epidemic of autoimmunity issues.
Yes. I started out at Rockefeller studying a bunch of diseases. One of my favorite illnesses, which is a horrible illness for those of you out there who may have it, is systemic lupus erythematosus. Hard to describe and hard to pronounce, but it is a serious illness of young people, mostly young women. So I worked in the lab studying that condition, and I worked with Professor Kunkel. And I don't know if you know how the Rockefeller University works, but it is a university based on disciplines And so immunology is one department, and it's headed by a very distinguished and well-practiced scientist. So Kunkel was one. There were many others, like Macklin McCarty, who with McCarty and others had discovered how DNA works, for example. There were many, many famous Nobel winners, and I worked both in immunology, and I spent a lot of time, I spent time in Dr. Darnell's lab, which was the place where leptin was discovered, which, as you know, is big with lipid metabolism, fat, understanding cholesterol and how that works. But I also worked with Jack Fishman, and I have to mention Jack Fishman and Leon Bradlow, both of whom are deceased. Jack was the discoverer of a drug that we use today, which I don't think he ever thought was going to be successful, called Narcan. Narcan is the drug that we use for drug overdoses to save, I'm not going to say hundreds of thousands, but millions of lives, people who overdose on heroin, fentanyl, and we use it in the field. And I dare say that every police department in America, every policeman knows how to use Narcan and has Narcan in their trunks. Well, Jack and I worked together on the sex hormones and autoimmune disease. And he was really a remarkable mind. He was a great mind, as was Henry Kunkel. They were great minds. And this was at Rockefeller. And I also had the pleasure of doing research at the Rockefeller Hospital. And that still exists today. It's a very special hospital just for medical research science. And I knew the Rockefeller family, and I had taken care of several members of the Rockefeller family at that time. Now there's like several generations later.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a very interesting experience.
That's a really amazing experience.
It is.
And obviously shaped all your research today.
Yes.
You also mentioned that you saw JFK speak in Newark.
I did. Well, he spoke on the steps of Newark City Hall, and his host was Peter Rodino. I remember this vividly. And this was when I was very, very young, and I took a train from my home with my Super 8 camera. And I couldn't get film footage of him because the crowd of people was so dense, even though I was up front as a little kid. Mm-hmm. But I was to President JFK, John F. Kennedy, I would say I was about 10 yards away from him. And I remember him vividly standing there, very handsome man. And he had an open top car. And on the roofs, which I don't know if many people know, there were snipers to protect him. Obviously, the Secret Service, et cetera, was not as robust as it is today to protect our presidents. But we did have Secret Service, and they took care of Jack Kennedy. And I remember seeing Jack very, very close up, but I did not meet him.
Wow.
I did not meet him. Bill Clinton, President Clinton, did meet President Kennedy because he was, I guess, a youth Democrat from Arkansas at the time, and went to the White House and had the opportunity to shake hands with. But I did meet Jack's brother, Bobby.
Yeah, during medical school.
First year medical school. I'm wearing my short white coat, and Bobby Kennedy is campaigning for president in Philadelphia. And you know how the streets in Philadelphia are very narrow. So he's coming down the street, and there I am in my white coat, and I'm waving, and he stops the car and opens the door and says, "Hop in." And I sat next to him for about a block. And I said, "Boy, this is a great honor." And and I don't want to imitate him, but he was a delightful person. This is Robert RFK Jr.'s father. And I do have his autograph on a American Block of 4 of the Justice Stamp, because he was the Attorney General during JFK's term of office. Very delightful guy.
You know, we saw this show. There's a show on Netflix.
Yes.
So it's 11/22/63.
That was the date of the assassination.
And it was about the assassination.
Yes.
And the main actor is James Franco, I believe, in the show.
Yes.
And he goes back in time to that period. And the idea was that he was going to stop the assassination.
Oh, boy, yes.
And it's a whole show. I recommend it. We were watching it like from the start. We just...
Oh, I have to see it. It's on Netflix.
It's on Netflix. It was very, very cool.
That'll be very interesting stuff.
It was, yeah. But you were in history already.
Well, at that part, yeah.
Not at that moment.
It was just such a minor thing. But in retrospect, it was a great memory to have. And I never forgot meeting Bobby Kennedy. I did see Jack. I met Bobby. And when I was a Boy Scout. I was an Eagle Scout, And when I became an Eagle Scout at the age of 13 or 14, Eisenhower
oh my God.
wrote a letter of congratulations. And I tell that to people, they can't believe that. But he did, Ike. And I remember Ike I never met him. I never saw him, but he wrote this beautiful letter, which was very nice, congratulating me as an Eagle Scout.
Wow. Do you still have that?
I don't think so. I may have it somewhere in my files, but there was a couple of things that I looked for, but that was so long ago.
You also, interestingly enough, mentioned that you got locked in a closet with Dr. Martin Luther King.
Well, everybody knows that. Yes,
himself.
Not everybody. It was in the New York Times.
Our audience now are going to learn.
You're going to know this. This is an interesting story. And I just had lunch last year with Martin Luther King Jr. III, his son. Wonderful. I had the opportunity to meet Dr. King because at the time, many of your older viewers would remember that Martin Luther King was not considered a person that of great stature, even though he was a brilliant guy. He came to speak at the university that I was at, and I sat in the first row. And at the beginning of his speech, there was a bomb scare. And at the time, police came to this bomb scare. They had already been there for him because there was a lot of commotion about his talking before the student body. And at the time of the bomb scare, this police officer with a German Shepherd came to me, and they put me in the side, I guess you'd call it a proscenium, side closet of the stage. And Dr. King came there as well. And we closed the door. The dog, the police officer, one other student who I can't remember, Martin Luther King, and myself. And we were in that closet for about 20 to 30 minutes discussing things like segregation. And I didn't know who Dr. King was. If I had known at the time that this was the great MLK, I would have said, holy cow. But at the time, I was just a little kid who was talking to one of the greats of history.
Yeah, I mean, a true superstar, right?
Yeah, he was a true superstar, indeed, and very memorable. I remember, there's no copies of the speech that he gave that day because the university authorities were looking for it, the people. But the New York Times covered the fact that there was a bomb scare because they covered the news that he was giving a speech. And what he said to me in the closet or in the proscenium was, it was a Catholic university. And he said, any Catholic university that honors a guy named Martin Luther deserves all the credit in the world. And I said, that's pretty witty,
I didn't
and that
think
was
of that.
Dr. King. Yeah. It was really sharp.
I mean, not many people can say they've been locked in a closet with the great or they've met
right.
Bobby Kennedy, Eisenhower wrote you a congratulations.
Yes, he did.
So you're a walking history.
I like to think that way, and I try to imbue my grandchildren with this stuff, but I don't think they really listen to me or believe me.
It's a new generation
it is,
now. They're caught up with TikTok and Instagram and all of that. But before all of that, there was real history happening, and you got to be a part of it.
Yes.
So that's incredible.
Oh, that was only the early part of history, and as time went on, as you know, I'm sure you're going to talk about that stuff.
So after, as we went through your house, we also noticed there was a big wall what you call the 9/11 wall.
Yes.
And 9/11 was a huge, catastrophic day for everybody.
Yes,
Very sad day.
Very sad.
Especially for Americans. And you have a big part with the aftermath and helping out.
Yes.
And so you have this big, beautiful wall dedicated to 9/11.
Yes,
so
I do.
Please elaborate.
Okay. So in 1990, my family became emergency medical technicians, EMTs. And they said to me, hey, you should become an EMT. And I said, yeah, but I'm a doctor. I said, there must be a special training program. And indeed there was. and I went to an accelerated certification course to be an emergency medical technician. A lot of people watching that are good friends from the state of New Jersey and New York would know this. And so I took this course and I became a moonlighter. And I was working in New York City in rheumatology, immunology. I had been chief of rheumatology at St. Luke's Roosevelt, now Mount Sinai West. I was chief at the time of 9/11 at St. Vincent's Hospital in Greenwich Village. So the day of, and then to moonlight, I would go across the river to Hudson County. And in the year 1990, it was about a year after I became an EMT certified in New Jersey, I became the director at their request of emergency medical technicians, emergency medicine in the field in Jersey City or Hudson County. Hudson County, Jersey City sort of ran the paramedic program for all of Hudson County. So that paramedic program, I was the medical director of. So I would come over across the Hudson River a couple times a week and just meet with the EMTs and sometimes give refresher courses and stuff to the paramedics. So then everything was going well until 9/11, 2001. And that day, I was on my way into the city to park my car at St. Vincent's Hospital, which is at, I think, 6th Avenue and 16th Street. And then the plane, I took the PATH train over to Manhattan, and I was running a clinic. And I had 2 patients, I remember, and the nurse comes running in and says to me, Doc, something terrible has happened. Now, St. Vincent's was like a quarter of a mile away from the towers, and a plane had hit the towers. And I said, well, it must have been a traffic helicopter or a traffic plane. I mean, nobody could imagine
Couldn't be a passenger.
That a passenger jet would hit one of the twin towers. And so then she comes running in and says, and I kept taking care of my patients, and she says, well, you're not going to believe this, but another plane hit the second tower. And I said, oh my gosh. And then I knew immediately it was terrorism, because I was giving a talk on germ warfare and stuff like that to the paramedics and EMTs. I had this canned talk that I gave. So I hopped on the PATH train because that morning was election day. I couldn't drive into Manhattan because of all the traffic. So I parked in Jersey City at a lot near Journal Square. And I got back on the PATH train. I remember coming out of the tunnel, I can see it now, with the towers smoking, like 2 big candles. And the people on the train had no idea. And I said, look out the window. And they said, oh my gosh, what is that? I said, some planes have just hit the twin towers. So I went to my car, and my car had all this first aid equipment in it. And if I had parked in Manhattan, I often said I probably would have driven down to the towers to help. But fortunately, I was in New Jersey, and I couldn't get through the Holland Tunnel, which they had closed. So I went to the pier, the Jersey City Pier, the York Street Pier to be exact. And the rest is history, as we say. That day, I set up the field hospital. People came across the Hudson River. That afternoon, the late Mickey McCabe and I, he was the head of EMS in Bayonne, New Jersey, we got 2 trauma nurses, drove my SUV and 20 ambulances and drove through the Holland Tunnel to the scene. The towers had already collapsed. That was the afternoon. It was about 2 p.m. And again, we spent the next week back and forth. I went by tugboat, and we had barges full of patients coming to the York Street Pier, which was, by the way, a condemned pier at the time. And it's very historical. It was quite a traumatic experience, to say the least.
But you came through and you used, you were able to rally up other medical professionals and get there.
It was extraordinary. Our radios did not work because the tower, the South Tower, I believe, had the big antenna on it for the 2-way radios that we all carried. So I basically had no phone service for a while, so I couldn't call anybody in my family to tell them where I was. There was, of course, the rest of you out there know what happened. It was a commotion. People never forgot it. But
remember seeing it on TV.
Exactly. And I got runners. I told some policemen, I said, go and run to the hospital or drive your car up there and get some help. We need stethoscopes, blood pressure cuffs, oxygen tanks. We needed all of that. I had oxygen in the back of my SUV. I had a wrench that disappeared, had never been seen since. The oxygen tank ran out of oxygen very quickly. I had surgical tools. We finally had paramedics respond who put tarps down, and the tarps are these, like the rug here. The red tarp was for immediate use, and the green tarps were for minor injuries. The red tarps were for serious advanced life support. The black tarps were for the dead bodies. And
Wow.
we laid people out. And in Manhattan, they had about Beekman Downtown Hospital, and there was a movie on this, ER 9/11 emergency room, where they used the same kind of mass casualty system to identify who was dying and who was not dying. And I had a train by the mid-afternoon, early evening. I had trains of ambulances. I had other doctors who had responded.
So you organized the whole thing, and everyone
we had
followed
so
suit.
much. Yeah, so that's how I have the 9/11 wall, because the president
beautiful.
wrote me and People magazine and all this stuff. There's a lot of publicity at the time.
Yeah.
It was a really interesting time. It was very devastating and very, very traumatic for all of us.
But yet you were able, in a way, to bring some hope to the situation. You saved lives, and you were able to bring together a community.
Yes.
You were really a first response team.
Yes, that was first response at its best.
At its best.
Because people came out of the woodwork. You have no idea. Restaurants delivered food to us in the middle of the night. I said, I need stethoscopes. A truckload of stethoscopes arrived. It was extraordinary. And I used to get emotional talking about this because it really brought people together like never before.
That is amazing that you were able to put it. It sounds like a scene from Pearl Harbor.
Well, it was
where
compared
the
to that.
nurse,
It was compared to that. A lot of that was like Pearl Harbor. Several people, several nurses talked to me about that. We had, of course, an array of politicians who showed up, et cetera, not the least of which was George W. Bush, who came. And workmen from construction sites got on the police launches with me and went over the next day and the next day to help. We have stories. I mean, if I wrote this, I think I wrote a piece for the Journal of Emergency Medicine that we had the path tunnel flooded, and we thought that there was a breach of the tunnel, like the Holland Tunnel, but this was the path tunnel with the Hudson River. But in fact, the water was tested with divers, and they found it was fresh water. So it was the air conditioning system from the Twin Towers that exploded and leaked down into the ground, into the tunnels. We actually heard clicking noise on the Manhattan side, and we lowered a very skinny policeman on a rope down the shaft, the shaft of the Holland Tunnel, and the clicking sound turned out to be wires that were shorting. We thought there was somebody alive down there below the tower.
Wow.
And there was nothing. It was quite an adventure.
Obviously you've written several books, and writing
Nothing
a book on
about
something
9/11,
like that
no.
would be.
I just wrote magazine pieces because, and I wrote an editorial for our medical journal on back then. I think it was October of 2001. And that stands as a classic.
You wouldn't be considered as a superhero or a superstar if you didn't overcome like such challenges. And you had a moment where you had to make a decision and get organized during this catastrophe of 9/11.
During this catastrophe, I never knew it was going to be as extraordinary as it was, or as a part of history. Remember, I was in a clinic taking care of, I remember a young woman with scleroderma of one leg. It was localized scleroderma. And I remember leaving her on the examining table. I felt so guilty because I went back across the river to get my truck. And I don't know what happened to her after that. She disappeared, but the rest is history. And I mean, what I thought was nothing turned out to be, wow.
It was a big to-do.
It was a big to-do.
So, Dr. Bob, between you and me and now the audience, I would consider you a bona fide badass. You can coin that.
I've never been called a badass, but I can see that.
But you've done amazing things in very stressful situations.
Yes.
You've also mentioned other emergency situations in which you
Right.
came to the rescue.
I became very, very interested in emergency medicine. And to this day, I volunteer with my own emergency volunteers. The volunteers have now been taken over by the fire department. So there are no longer volunteers in Ridgewood, which is where I lived. I'm now in Saddle River, New Jersey, and I am the medical director of the town. But I don't respond to emergencies like I used to. I used to go to everything that I could, cardiac arrests and severe motor vehicle accidents, etc. And that was my thing. I enjoyed the excitement, the adrenaline rush, and I was good at it and knew what to do. And I still carry with me emergency equipment in my car.
And you mentioned to us to see the show, The Pit.
The Pit is a great show.
That it is actually very
accurate.
True.
Very accurate. It's
So,
a little bit.
Go ahead and watch it.
Yeah, you can watch it, but here's the thing, as Noah Weil would say, it was written by the consultants, are very good for that show, the emergency medicine consultants. And so that they come up quickly with a differential. I wish my students and my residents would be that sharp and come up with these things so quickly.
Well, they have to keep it in a certain
they
time
have a
limit,
script.
So.
That's right. They have a script and they'll name like 6 diseases that cause, hemorrhagic lung or whatever.
Wow.
So, but it's an interesting experience for everybody.
So then you met your current wife.
My beautiful wife, Carolyn Palmer. She's kept her name, and she's the most gifted artist. Incredible. And she actually made this bust of William Osler. They asked her to do this. He's the father of internal medicine, and many doctors have copies of this bust. And she's made far more interesting sculptures.
Including the Frank Sinatra in Hoboken.
In Hoboken, yes. And one for London, England right now she's working on. And Mother Nature, which is yet to be unveiled.
And we had the pleasure of meeting her, and she is a riot herself.
Yes.
Hysterical and so much fun.
Yes.
So I can imagine your home is anything but boring.
Never boring.
Sculptures.
Never boring. It's like a museum. Thanks to Carolyn. And she is, and she's really an amazing person. And we joke about this, but this is true. We fit right brain, left brain being my brain, her brain being left brain. She's ambidextrous and a perfect artist. She can sculpt anybody in great detail. And she's one of the most famous sculptors currently in America.
And how did you guys meet?
Accidentally at a concert.
I'll
leave it at that. It was a concert I had at my home. I won. This is what fate does. I won this concert in a raffle with the New Jersey Symphony.
Wow.
And this chamber orchestra showed up, and I charged $50 for everybody to come to the concert, which I donated.
Which was in your home?
In my home. I donated it to the Wounded Warriors. And we made a lot of money for the Wounded Warriors, which is a great charity. Absolutely. And there was Carolyn in the audience. So it was wonderful.
And when you saw her, did you just have this
I just
sparks?
Said, whoa.
Look at
well,
this
I think at the concert, I talked to her, but I really don't think that was the first date. I think the first date came later.
Okay. And
I'll let her
there's
talk
much
about
more
that.
about that. We'll just have to have her on the show so she can fill in the gaps here for us.
Yeah.
Beautiful. So through all of this history and research and experiences, both good and bad.
Yes.
We have mentioned that you have written several books, and you
Yes.
have a latest book right now coming out called The Biological Soul.
It's in its very early stages. The Biological Soul is extraordinary. And I'll leave it at that because I don't want to tip my hand there. We have editors, and I have an agent that's working with me. And I've written the whole book. But of course, when it's in its early drafts, it has to be reformulated, and it may be too complicated for the general public. So it has to be simplified a little bit, just as I did with Immunity Strong. To talk about the immune system is very difficult because it's very technical. And the same thing with the Biological Soul, which is largely about epigenetics, or the genetics of gene expression and how it affects our behavior.
Yes, you can find this book on Amazon.
Yes, you can. All the books on Amazon.
All of the books are still
They're all
on
there.
Amazon.
Yes.
Easy to read.
Yes.
Excellent.
Yep.
All right. So this is the fun part for me in particular. I love to get to know the guests on a more personal level and find out things that maybe the general public doesn't know.
Well, there's a lot of things that the general
Well, the alligator really threw me in for a loop. But so you have several other hobbies, obviously, other than medicine, and you are a ventriloquist, it says here.
Yeah. Well, that's for children.
And how did you start this?
Oh, that's
Where did this
an
come
easy story. I mean, you can do it or you can't do it. And I mean, those of you out there who do ventriloquy, it's not difficult, but you have to practice. You have to practice. And I did it, dare I say, in a bar in South Dakota. Rapid City actually was the first time Carlos the Crow came out. And it was hysterical. It brought the house down. So I figured, wow, this is pretty interesting stuff. People really like this. It's not just for kids. And,
no, it's
so
for
I did
everyone.
It.
I mean, there's this famous ventriloquist that sells out shows. And
Charlie McCarthy.
And he has all these, like, his puppets are famous themselves.
Yes, they are.
Wow. We mentioned that you also obviously collect rare autographed stamps that we talked about.
That's right.
And this is going to be really fun. You play the accordion.
Yes. Well, that's correct. And when I was in medical school, I went through medical school playing at a hotel, which was subsequently closed because of Legionnaire's disease. It was the place where Legionnaire's disease was discovered. I played the dining room, the hotel, which I won't mention because it may prevent people from going to the current hotel, which is on the site and different name hotel in Philadelphia.
Okay.
But I went to lawn parties. I played at people's bar mitzvahs, at weddings. I played all sorts of stuff. And the Union League, the Naval Base, I can remember. And I made money to support myself through medical school. My parents helped me, but they were, low middle class. My father being a fireman, my mother was a school crossing guard. They were helping me with tuition because remember, I was in school for 6 years. I took 2 years off to get a PhD. And so that's how I supported myself.
And where did you learn how to play the accordion?
Oh, I took lessons when I was a kid because my parents were immigrants from Eastern Europe. And my father was born there. My mother was born here, but her parents came from Eastern Europe. And that was the instrument. That was the street instrument that everybody played. So that's why I became an accordionist. And I learned from the age of 5 how to read music. And then the rest is history, as we say. Played for many Oktoberfests, you can imagine. Many,
please, I would love to see this.
Many events. Indeed.
Well, fortunately for our viewers and for myself, you brought your famous accordion.
I bought one of them. Yes.
One of them.
I was looking for the small one today, but I couldn't find it. I had several others, but I brought the actual one that is electronic. However, you're just going to hear it without the electronics. It's a beautiful sound. It's a beautiful accordion.
Oh, we can't wait.
Yeah.
We can't wait. All right. So let's play, shall we?
Can we get it?
Let's do it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we welcome Dr. Bob on this accordion. Shall we?
I've played all around the world, but a lot of Parisian music with Edith Piaf, you know?
This is how you serenade Miss Carolyn, don't you?
if you like something, if you'd like something like a little tango, we can do that too.
Ooh, let's do a little tango. Right up my alley. La cabeza.
Oh, thank you, thank you. So you get an idea.
Wow. I wasn't expecting all of that. When was the last
that's
time you
just good
played?
stuff. About 2 weeks ago.
Okay, so you still
I
play
keep this
for
in
some
just for
people.
myself.
Well, and now everybody who's seen this.
Well, now the whole country is going to see this, but no, I play for myself, and I get sheet music, and I learn new songs, and I can be. Somebody asked me to play at a dinner, I would do that just for friends, or I would play the piano. I did it. Remember, this is a keyboard. This is called a
Beautiful.
piano accordion versus a bandoneon. A bandoneon is with buttons. And
Okay.
in the Ukraine and probably in Russia, other parts of Eastern Europe, the bandoneon is popular. In France and in other countries of Europe, the piano accordion. And so this allows me to play the piano or the keyboard. And the only thing one has to do is taper the left hand, which is here, the bass. The bass with the buttons is the way I was brought up. But on the keyboard, I learned to play the clef. And I'm pretty good at the clef so that no one could tell the difference, but I would love to be able to play the left hand on the piano a little better and read
Wow.
music, classical music, for example.
Wow.
So this is something that occupies your brain, and makes you want to
your
do things
downtime.
in my downtime.
Between hours of 3 and 4 a.m.
Yeah, that's right.
So you play beautifully.
Thank you.
This accordion, you have medicine. Is there a connection between music and medicine?
Yes. Music and medicine is very popular. You'll find that a lot of doctors, a lot of my colleagues, I used to play in a band called the Nodes, as in lymph node, and we played, and over
perfect.
the years, I played in many, many bands with keyboard. Much today, the accordion is coming back because of salsa and because of Latino music. And I've like Besame Mucho and all that sort of thing. I play all of that. And I have electronic feeds with MIDIs and amplifiers that make it sound like a full orchestra, actually, when this thing is plugged in to everything else. And I have a travel accordion that I take with me to like Europe. I played on the Ponte Vecchio, below the Eiffel Tower. And actually, the funny story is that I opened my suitcase and I'd be playing and people start throwing euros in my suitcase. And when they find out I'm a physician, they come back and take their euros out. That's it. Nobody
And then
wants
they ask,
to.
well, I have this thing here.
Yeah. Nobody wants to donate to a wealthy doctor,
Oh,
even though he's
wow.
playing a street instrument. So I always said that if I lose my job, I could go down in the subway and play music. So that's it.
That is incredible. Very multi-talented.
Thank you.
Superstar, obviously.
Oh,
So now what we'd love to do as you take this
I'm going to put it back
off,
in its case.
Yep. We're going to ask you a couple of quick questions.
Oh, yes. This is going to be the fun part.
Yes, this will be the fun part.
Okay.
We are now segueing into the portion of our show called the Superstar Standard. And I'm going to ask you 5 questions and very quick responses just to get an idea of what you consider a superstar.
Okay.
Okay. So, number 1, what is one word that defines a real superstar?
Multi-talent.
Multi-talented.
Yes.
I mean, as we saw here,
No,
multi-talented.
well, not me. I mean, but multi-talented people. There are many who sing and dance and play instruments, etc.
But always being curious too, right?
Yeah, curious.
Okay, number 2. What is more important, fame or impact?
Impact.
Impact.
Yes. Impacting as a doctor, impacting the health of a variety of people, impacting people's lives at the worst time in their lives. I mean, some people like fame, but fame is fleeting.
Yes.
But the impact you have on people will never be forgotten. Even with the written word, your effect on people would last forever. You know, we're all nobody gets out of this world alive, my favorite saying. And when we all
take
die,
it too seriously.
we have to leave something that impacts people.
Beautiful. Something to remember.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, what matters most, talent or discipline?
Ooh, matters most in what regard? To my life?
I would say to the general public, to the audience who's listening here, for those who are trying to discover themselves.
Yes. Okay. Discipline leads to talent. Okay. Discipline is important. You're never going to be, I mean, some people have natural talent, like my beautiful wife, Carolyn, has a natural talent. This is a gift. Her ability to take a piece of clay and make it into a being, a spirit, but, you know, that takes discipline. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of patience, and it's corrections constantly. Same thing with writing a book. You really need the discipline to sit down. You've heard of writer's block. People who write cannot necessarily sit and write copiously for 48 hours or write through the night. Other people can sit down and write page after page after page. But the discipline means you have to go over it and make sure what you're doing is correct.
And it makes an impact.
It makes an impact. You want to cause an impact to happen.
Okay. Now, number 5, what does being a superstar actually mean to you?
Well, first, I don't think I'm a superstar. I think I'm just a regular country doctor. This is what my boss used to call himself, and he was like a Nobel Prize winning candidate. He said, I'm a country doctor. And I said,
like teacher,
no, you're not a country doctor. But anyhow, I just like to be a modest physician that takes care of sick people. And I'm very lucky to be able to do that.
You are. And you have created a name for yourself. You have impacted many people's lives.
Really important.
And you've also brought a lot of joy through your personality, your charisma, your musical abilities, your stories. Beautiful storyteller.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for doing this interview with us and taking your time at a busy day.
My pleasure.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are heading into my favorite segment of the show, the Superstar Showdown. Hungry for more? You've just heard the interview, but there's so much more to see. Watch the complete show on YouTube at Superstar Denise, including our game segment and featured Superstar Spotlight performance. We'll see you there.